Welcome to another episode of What Even Is D&D. Today's episode is involving roleplay and backstories. And on that note, let's jump right into it. Now, you don't always have to dress for the occasion, so to speak, but it can be fun. There's all sorts of elements to roleplay. Obviously, it depends on comfort levels, the group, a plethora of things. But we'll get to that in a second. Let's start with backstory. Now, backstory. Why is that important? It can be important for several reasons. So starting off, it can help your DM tremendously. You think of your character. What is your character's backstory? That gives them so much to work with. But it doesn't just give them things to work with. It helps you out too. Figuring out what your character likes, what they don't like, their motivations for things, helps you figure out what your character would do in situations. Because sometimes you don't know what you would do in situations, but when you're put into them, you kind of figure them out. You've got to kind of think at this, come at it from an angle of like an actor. You need to know what the motivation is to act, to portray your character. Now, sometimes you can't think of everything, so you can roll for these things. This brings up dice from last time. You could roll odd or even to see if your character likes this. So I've got a handy dandy die right here. Whoop, I did. That happens a lot with dice. So you've got a die. Does my character like potatoes? All right, I got an 8. I did not say odd or even, but let's do it a different way. Low, they don't like it. The lower the roll, the more they don't like it. So a natural 1, they hate it. They can't stand it. They despise it. Natural 20, they are addicted to it. They cannot get enough of it. So I'll roll potatoes again. And I've got an 11. Mostly indifferent, but would eat it, Depending on how you want to do things, you can do stuff like that. You don't have to necessarily use that method. There are plenty of them, and you can just come up with stuff that your character likes. When doing your backstory, I gave my characters a kind of questionnaire. You can do it however you want to, but it's nice to be able to include some sort of contact. So if your DM has to have somebody that you can request aid from, that's great. Childhood friends, enemies, or trauma, or fears. Those are great because it helps your DM come up with stuff and helps them to help you act it out and become the character. And that goes right back into role-playing. Now, role-playing. Again, this is a level of comfort. Depending on how comfortable you are with it will depend on how much you will get into it. You don't have to just full on become the character, but some people like to really get into it. This is something to discuss with your DM at your session 0. But it's a nice little it's a nice way to get out of your own head or get into your own head, depending on what kind of character you play. It can change things up if you want to play something completely out of your norm, or if you want to try to figure out what you do in a situation, you can play out yourself. And depending on what class you play or species, it can change things dramatically too. So let's say you want to play a bard. What kind of bard do you want to play? Do you want to play the flirtatious bard? Hey! Do you want to play the swashbuckling bard? Uh, the music obsessed bard, the lore fanatic, the one who's always wanting to know more knowledge and everything and spread the word, tell tales of all sorts of things. Do you want to play a cleric? You could be. I know clerics are the healers most of the time. Like, but is that how you want to play them? Do you want to play them as the I will heal you? Yes, I am the noble healer. Or do you want to play them as like greedy, like, ooh, you know what? I'll heal you. Uh, you just got a scratch. Anything outside of our normal work, I have to charge extra for. So, sorry, that'll cost you. Or maybe manipulative healer. Listen, if you guys aren't going to start doing as I say, I'm not going to be dishing out the healing like I normally do. So then there's, fighter. Do you want to play an angry fighter, a noble fighter? You know, it all depends on you and how you want to change it. The character is basically an extension of you, and it gives you a way to put out feelers and figure that out for yourself. And after a while, you'll start to really feel what the character's feeling. Well, at least that's been my experience. The deeper you get into it, the more attached you will find you become to these most of the time. I don't know that it doesn't happen. Again, this is my experience, but it is just an absolute pleasure to do this. Also, you don't always have to be 100% in character. You can describe how your character is. If you're having a day where you don't want to, act, you can be like, my character's devastated. Like, okay, well, it, or if you don't want to role play as much and you just like playing it up for the combat, you can probably find a group like that too. Role playing is a part of it. It doesn't have to be the only part. It it is one thing that kind of helps, set the scene for everything. But it doesn't have to be the only thing. You can play your style. Backstory is helpful just because, it's backstory. It's like, it's just the start. It's your roots. You can start with no backstory, but that doesn't give somebody a lot to work with. Do you have a chip on your shoulder because nobody ever believed in you? Or, were you betrayed? Do you have abandonment issues? Like, what drives your character helps build that world too, and helps you play into it. Both of them really connect together. But again, it's a comfort level thing. If you're new and you can't come up with much, you can also always ask the DM to help you out. Like, hey, I'm not good with making backstories. I haven't done this before, or however you want to approach them. Can you brainstorm with me and let's figure it out? But role playing and backstories are a pretty big part of D&D. Again, don't have to be if it's not your style. But thank you again for joining me on another What Even Is D&D. If you want to watch more of this, if you are more curious about other things, I will have a link to a playlist, and I think there'll also be like a link somewhere to a video suggested, and subscribe. And if you got the time, I appreciate a like. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. I hope to start answering questions at the end of these. I've only had one thus far from a friend of mine. So throw them my way, and I'll try to address them in the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good time playing.